teachers, students, to our annual Memorial Day Assembly. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to silently stand up and remain silent through the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance. But first, I would like to remind everyone that Memorial Day, no matter when you celebrate it, is a solemn occasion. As such, I know that you will be very respectful and silent when all of our speakers are speaking and our performers are performing. Now I'd like you to all rise silently for our Sacramento banner. Memorial Day is a day set aside for remembering the men and women who died while serving in the military. It was originally called Decoration Day. The first Decoration Day took place after the Civil War to honor those soldiers who died in that war. In 1882, its name became Memorial Day and was celebrated on May 30th. However, in 1968, Congress passed a bill changing its celebration to the last Monday in May, and that is why we celebrate it each year on the last Monday. Traditionally, on Memorial Day, at sunrise, the flag should be briskly raised to the top of the flagpole. That is called the flag being at full staff. Then slowly, the flag should be lowered to half staff to remember all those soldiers who died while serving their country. At noon, the flag should once again be raised to full staff. This symbolizes their memory being raised by the living as today's soldiers continue to fight for liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'd like to turn to the chorus, and they will be singing This Land Is Your Land.
This land
the class doing a Poppy is to Remember and in Flanders Field.
But still, in the muddy fields where they fought, wild poppies sprang up, glowing brightly.
An army doctor, weary from tending the wounded, wrote a poem about that war and about those poppies.
This poem was read far and wide. When the war finally ended on November 11, 1918, people everywhere celebrated the return to peace.
A poppy is to remember those far from home, crossing troubled lands and threatening waters and dangerous skies.
It is for the wounded and those who care for them. It is for the dead and those who carried on in the middle.
It is for the brave ones who remain in the memories of battle.
A poppy is for peace.
A poppy is to remember.
Thank you, that was very nice. Now we'll hear from our State Senator, Richard Ross.
Thank you, Kelly. As is always, it's a great honor to join you here this morning actually this afternoon, to celebrate the recognition to our fallen heroes. It's amazing how many of you there are who are just starting to get a grasp of what our freedoms cost us. But just the very name of your school alone, named after Freeman-Kennedy, reminds us that a young person, just like me, with hopes and dreams for the future, came to this school not realizing that when they stood up for those freedoms and went out to serve in our military forces, that they might lose their life. This community is a wonderful community in the sense that it realized what a great sacrifice he made for this community. It realizes what a great sacrifice it was for his family, and certainly gave him the great honor of having a school with people built for dreams for the future who may be able to give us a brighter future than he may have had because of what happened to him. And you might be able to make a world of difference as you move forward. I'm joined by State Representative Sean Dooley here this morning as well, Ben McCarty from Commander of the Post here in Norfolk, and by Selectman Jim Lehan. And we're all here to hopefully impart for you some things that you can understand about what people might be willing to make these kind of sacrifices. It is courageous men and women like Adam Kennedy who answer the call of duty and serve in harm's way for the sake of this great nation. I'm going to educate you a little bit about how many people have done that. More than 1 million guardians and protectors have made the ultimate sacrifice in America's wars to preserve the freedoms that we enjoy today. They gave so much to bring greater security and safety to our country and many other places in the world. They are the few to whom that we owe so much. We honor them, believe it or not, 131 national cemeteries in 39 states and Puerto Rico, as well as 33 soldiers' lots and monument sites, places like where different ships went down during the attack on Pearl Harbor. These national enclaves provide a place of serenity, beauty, and peace for more than 3.9 million Americans, including veterans of every war and conflict and their loved ones. Last year, 8.3 million people visited our national cemeteries to pay tribute to their loved ones and other Americans who have died for their country. Indeed, we owe a lasting tribute to these courageous men and women who stepped forward when their country called and made it possible for us to live the lives we choose and reflect with pride on Americans past, present, and look forward to you, the promise of our future. We cherish memories we will not forget them, as those who we hold dear remain forever in our hearts. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. Thank you to the administration and all of you for your attention. I appreciate it.
And now we'll hear from our state rep, Sean Dooley.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me here again today. It's a lot of fun, especially being able to see my daughter on it and the chorus. You guys did a phenomenal job. Congratulations. I know you've been working hard all year, every Wednesday morning. Yes, yeah. And congratulations to the band who, once again, Mr. Foraker does such a phenomenal job. You guys have worked so hard and do such a great job. It's one of the neat things. I travel around the state and I get to listen to all these other bands, and you guys blow away most of the high school bands out there. So it's congratulations for you, all your hard work. Now, I know you guys don't want to hear me talk for hours and hours and hours, so I'll be brief. I just kind of want to talk a little bit about freedom and what Memorial Day means. Everyone talks about freedom isn't free, and that these soldiers gave their lives for our freedom and have done all these things throughout the years, and all these great things and noble things. But it's people like you and your parents who go forward and make sure freedom works. In countries all over the world, there isn't freedom. There are countries throughout the world where girls are not allowed to go to school. And although that might sound good to some of you and sometimes, it is horrible that certain people aren't allowed to do certain things. By being free in America, we get to grow up to be whoever we want to be, do whatever we want to be, dress what we want to be, and most importantly, say what we want to be. In some countries, if you say something against the government, you get put in jail. If you do something that someone else doesn't like, for whatever reason, whether it's religious or anything like that, they can put you in jail or worse, sentence you to death. When we talk about people like Adam Kennedy, who came before us and who this school is named after, these people went and joined the military, not to die, hopefully they wouldn't die or get wounded or anything like that, but because they believed that this freedom, protecting this freedom for all of you and for future generations was important. Wanted to make sure you guys could do whatever you wanted to be when you grew up. And so, if you know a veteran, if one of your parents served in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or the Coast Guard, or one of your grandparents, or even a neighbor, anyone that you know, please go home and thank them, because they gave that willingly. They did that, they sacrificed, they gave up their time, their energy, and risked their life to make sure that you guys could grow up in the United States of America and be free to be whoever you want. Thank you very much for having me here again today.
Thank you. And next we'll have Norfolk Selectman, Mr. Jim Lehan.
I hope you all had a great day yesterday. Memorial Day is a day when we gather as family, we get together and we see our friends, and we have barbecues and we celebrate. We have a lot of holidays in this great Memorial Day is a special holiday. Better than Christmas, although you might not agree. But it's one of those days where we really have to take a step back and say thank you. As Representative Dooley said, and Senator Ross said, America is a very unique country, unlike any other country in the world. It's a country of an idea, and that idea is that you and I get to be free. We get to control our lives. We get to do what we think we can do and what we can accomplish. There are no limits to that. And it's a wonderful feeling. But it doesn't come freely. It comes at a price. And that price is forced on us sometimes by other people that feel that their way of life is different than ours. And we have to defend that. Some of you may know that this is the 70th anniversary of Normandy. Normandy was one of the great battles of World War II. And I'd like to share with you just a story, because I had the great opportunity to visit that a couple of years ago. And there's a little village that I've never heard of, and in fact, honestly, I couldn't tell you the name of it. But it was a small village, and it was held by the Germans. And the Americans, when they landed, attacked that village and took over that village. And there were 2 medics that were with that group of Americans. And they took the wounded Americans and they took the wounded German soldiers into this small church in this little village. And they took care of them. Well, the Germans counterattacked and they drove the Americans out. The medics didn't leave. They would not leave. They stayed with those wounded soldiers. And when the Germans returned, they honored those medics for taking care of their soldiers as well as the Americans. I was in Chicago about 3 years ago. And as I've told this story before, some of you, I apologize, but it's one of the most meaningful things I've ever seen at Memorial Day. And I was walking down through the airport. There was a crowd gathering by one of the terminals, big crowd. And I asked what was going on. And they said there was a veteran of World War II who was coming into that airport. And his grandson and his son were there to greet him. And the son was in the Navy. And he had on his full military white uniform, and he brought with him a Naval Honor Guard. And they were lined up by the door. And the door opened, and all these passengers came off, and everyone looked and didn't understand why this Honor Guard was there. And then this very elderly gentleman came off the runway, came off the pathway into the terminal with a cane, a military hat on, and it was this little boy's grandfather. And he ran to his grandfather as the military group came to full salute, gave him a big hug. And the grandfather leaned up, looked at his grandson, and came up with a very fragile salute, and saluted his grandson. And his grandson moved back and saluted his grandfather. There wasn't a dry eye in the place. Well, ironically, I didn't know it at the time, and I learned it since, that gentleman was one of those 2 medics that was in Normandy that treated those soldiers, both Germans and Americans. That's what we do. We help each other. We remember each other. We honor and respect each other. It's one of the core values that make this nation as great as it is. And it's one of the reasons why Memorial Day is such a wonderful, wonderful holiday. So when you thank a veteran, you'll know why. But I'd like you to do one other thing if you get a chance. When you see a policeman or a fireman in our little town in Norfolk, go up and thank them too. Because they do, every day, they protect you. And they take care of us. And we owe them a debt of gratitude too. So take a moment and thank them. They're always around, probably stopping your mom and dad from speeding. Kidding. But take a moment and thank them. Because they deserve our thanks as much as our veterans do. So thank you very much for letting me speak to you. And I hope you have a great, great day.
And our final speaker will be the commander of the Norfolk American Legion, Post 335, Mr. Ben McCartney.
As Jim Leanne just pointed out, this year is the 70th anniversary of the Normandy invasion in World War II. It also is the 150th anniversary of the U.S. Civil War, year of 1864. as Sean, Julie, and Richard Ross pointed out, we have our national cemeteries. In 1864, Arlington National Cemetery was created. Across from Washington, D.C., there's an estate, the Arlington House. At the time, it had been owned by Robert E. Lee. If you recall your history books or your classrooms, Robert E. Lee was the general for the Confederate Army. This greatly distressed General Montgomery Meigs, a Union general who had lost a son in the Civil War. He decided that we needed to have a cemetery, and he did not like General Lee, and he wanted to make sure General Lee would not come back to his house. So he had found out that General Lee, during the war, did not pay his taxes on Arlington House. Therefore, he said the United States government should take the property and turn it into a cemetery. And that is what the United States government did. They took the property, and General Meigs then set up the cemetery. And in fact, if you've ever been to Arlington National Cemetery today, the General Lee mansion is still there. In fact, it's above the grave sites of the Kennedy family. John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy are buried right below it with their eternal flame, and you can see above it in the photographs the Arlington House pillared mansion. The other interesting thing about Robert E. Lee is that even though he fought for the Confederates, he was offered the command of the Union Army first. This greatly distressed him because while he loved his country, his father, General Light Horse Harry Lee from the Revolution, fought for the Revolution, and before our country, the United States, was formed, had such a great love of Virginia that he then passed this on to his son, Robert E. Lee. So when Robert E. Lee was offered the command of the Union armies, he regretfully refused it because he knew he could not ever fight against his love of Virginia. Many years later, the United States recognized this, and they restored Robert E. Lee's citizenship by an act of Congress in the 1970s. So, which is only fitting because we have the compassion and unity, as Jim Leanne had said, regarding Normandy with the German soldiers being taken care of by the American medics. In the Civil War, you had similar things happen, with the Confederate surgeons and the Union surgeons working together to take care of the soldiers who had been wounded during the battles, whatever side they were. In Normandy, there's also the other cemeteries, some national cemeteries over there. When the United States invaded Europe and freed the entire countries of Europe and the continent, the United States gave the property back, everything that they conquered. The only thing the United States asked for was some land to bury the dead that have given their lives to give liberation to France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Czechoslovakia, Poland, England, and the other countries. The countries gladly gave the land to them in perpetuity. No fees or taxes are ever being billed or asked from the United States. And these cemeteries hold our honored dead. Also, in Normandy, France, they also celebrate the commemorations of these days. This year, it's a big one, 70th anniversary. When you think about it, the World War II veterans now, the youngest one, if they were age 18 at 1945, would now be 87 years old. So many people think that this will be the last great one where the veterans will be able to return while aged and in good enough health to get there. So it is a special one. They expect many politicians to be there, but there's been one group there for quite a while, since 1945. After the first year of liberation, there was a parade in the town of St. Mihiel-Glace, France. It was set up by the mayor of St. Mihiel-Glace, which has the distinction of being the first town liberated by the Americans when they landed through the air and set up the Pathfinders and the airborne to pave the way for the ships and the Army and the Navy to come in on the beaches. Since that time, every year, there have been many ceremonies, some big, some small, in the villages and towns of Normandy. Parades have also been done. There is an organization set up by the mayor of St. Mihiel-Glace's wife at the time, Mrs. Renault, called, and excuse my French, I'm not the best at it, the Amis des Americans Veterans, Friends of the American Veterans. This year, they're trying to make it extra special. And in fact, on June 7th, the same day that we are having our Community Day here in Norfolk, they are having a Liberty Banquet. There they will have many tears shed, many hugs exchanged, and many handshakes and friendships rekindled as they happen every year when the veterans return. The ADA president, Maurice Renault, is now the son of the original mayor of St. Mihiel-Glace at the time. He says, we must never forget those young Americans, most of whom were aged 20 years or younger, who gave their lives for our liberty. Each year we are honored to host the veterans and their families. And this year, he has promised that a new monument will be unveiled in the town square dedicated to the Allied troops who gave their life fighting behind enemy lines. There will also be a major expansion of the Airborne Museum there to commemorate the brave men who came from the skies on that morning. And a low-altitude parachute jump will also be on the agenda. So what I ask you to do on June 6th and June 7th, look at the television news, see if it's being commemorated. And when you're at Norfolk Community Day on that Saturday, June 7th, take a moment, stop and reflect. And we are able to enjoy such events as Community Day and have our free schools here because of the young men and women who have given their lives for freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we are going to have 7th and 6th grade students come forward and present the Gettysburg Address. These students also recited the Gettysburg Address yesterday morning at the Memorial Day activities at the cemetery in town.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on the great battlefields of that war.
We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this.
But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract.
The world will little know, nor long remember what we say here, but can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced.
It is rather for us to be here, dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion.
That we here highly resolve that these dead should not die in vain, that this nation under God shall renew for freedom.
Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Thank you. Next, the advanced band will be playing the Liberty March. Before we end today's assembly with taps, I'd just like to thank everybody once again, our distinguished guests, Mr. Foraker with the band, Mrs. Levine with the chorus, the third grade teachers, and all their students, and everybody who had to give up time with their students so that there could be practice and we could get this all together today. Thank you. Taps is played at the end of all military funerals. Today, during the assembly, we will have Michael Collins and Tristan Stefani play taps. Please remember that you do not applaud after the playing of taps. At the conclusion, please remain seated and silent until your teachers lead you back to your classrooms. Thank you.